Good. How are you? Welcome, everyone. We're going to call this meeting to order now. It is 6:34 on July 10, 2023, and this is a public meeting of the City of Portland Police Accountability Commission. My name is Victoria. I will be one of the facilitators today. With me is also Ayomide. If the Spanish language interpreters, Sasha and Carolina, can please give the information on the Spanish language interpretation.
Buenas noches. Esta reunión es una reunión pública sujeta a la ley del estado de Oregón y las normas administrativas de la ciudad de Portland y será grabada. Dispondremos de interpretación al español para esta reunión. Al acceder a la interpretación en español, verá la señal de video de los oradores, pero la señal de audio será sustituida por la del intérprete. Para acceder a ella, haga clic en Interpretación en los controles de la reunión de Zoom en la parte inferior de su pantalla y seleccione Español.
Muchas gracias. The city also offers ASL interpretation, which is being provided by Christine and Mary. Please pin their video feed to see their interpretation throughout the meeting. The closed captioning is turned on in Zoom as another means of assistance, but please note that this is an automatic captioning services and is not always accurate. The city supports access to meetings of the Police Accountability Commission and can provide other language support as well. Please email in advance of future public meetings, either as a response to a public meeting notice or directly to policeaccountability.portlandoregon.gov to ask for other access assistance, including interpretation into other languages. This meeting is a public meeting subject to the City of Portland Administrative Code and Oregon State Law and is being recorded. For this meeting, the chat function is enabled for commission members to communicate with each other. Members of the public will be able to ask questions using Zoom Q&A feature as the commissioners are presented and are discussing things. If attendees have questions, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A. We hope to use this feature to help guide our conversation during the meeting and future meetings agenda topics. We'd like to be clear that not all questions will be answered during the meeting, but if answered, both the question and answer will be visible to you and will become part of the meeting record. To access this feature, just click on the Q&A icon in the middle of your screen. And now I will pass it to co-chair team for the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. Hi, I am Tim Pitts. I use he, him pronouns, and I am one of the co-chairs of the Police Accountability Commission. The PAC uses the land acknowledgement on display at City Hall. We acknowledge that the rivers, lakes, streams, and lands of the lower Willamette River rest upon the occupied territories of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Cathlamet, Clackamas, Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Malala, and many other tribes. We recognize the many villages, traditions, cultures, and relationships that existed along the river since time immemorial. We recognize these tribes stewarded these lands and rivers since time immemorial for future generations. We recognize and undertake responsibility for the destruction of the river and land, of traditional food sources, sacred places, and multifaceted ways of life. We acknowledge the economic and social values that enabled the harm to the river, including systemic racism, classism, and other systems of oppression that perpetuated harm against Black, Indigenous, and immigrant communities along the river. With this acknowledgement, we commit to honoring and learning from the past and working towards a more equitable and sustainable future for the lower Willamette River. We commit to seeking solutions that acknowledge the inequities of past socioeconomic policies and the harm done to people and our relationships to these lands and waters.
Thank you, co-chair team. Now we will pass to the community agreements. There are 3 parts of the community agreements, 3 slides. Please read it and we will pass it. And at the end, I will ask the question. Thank you. Do we all commit to following the community agreements for today's meeting and to gently calling in our colleagues and collaborators if needed? Please, if I can see your hands, raise your hands that you agree to it. Thank you very much. Now I will pass it to the co-chairs to talk about and discuss the timeline. I think I will be co-chair Debbie.
That's right. Yes. Thank you, Victoria. The Police Accountability Commission has split its work into 6 phases. It is now in the 5th phase of work, transition plan and broader system. The commission will work until the end of August 2023 and will present its proposals to the City Council for their consideration and approval after it finishes meeting. This slide shows the outcome documents for the transition plan and broader system phase based on the agenda and scope approved by the commission. Now that the PAC has developed a rough draft of what the new accountability and oversight system will look like, the PAC will, in this phase, develop a transition plan for how to get from here to there, an understanding of how the process of implementing the new system will change or interact with other police oversight systems and levels of government, and also will name the new oversight board and bureau. Today, the full commission could discuss all 3 documents, but will spend most of its time on the transition plan and areas of agreement on broader system drafts. The next slide is the current project plan for the transition plan and broader system phase of the Police Accountability Commission's work. This slide is for members of the public to be able to understand how the commission gets from now through the end of the phase. Today's meeting falls into the blue boxes with the purple border located in the right portions of the screen. Following today, here are the upcoming meetings of the PAC. We'd like to highlight there will be a meeting this Thursday from 6:30 to 9, and if needed, next Monday from 6:30 to 9 to finish this phase of work. There is a community information session on Tuesday, July 11th, which is tomorrow, from 6 to 8 p.m. Today, we will have discussions on the draft areas of agreement on broader system and draft transition plan, as well as phase of work transition tasks and public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair Debbie. Now, our next item on the agenda is to review the draft areas of agreement on broader system. Co-chairs will present a draft, and I will pass it to the subcommittee co-chairs to present the draft documents. Their subcommittee refer to a full commission by giving a brief high-level overview of the document.
Hello, Subcommittee Co-Chair Casey. I am happy to do so. Are we pulling up the document, or should I give the overview and then we will pull up the document?
I think the overview is first because we need to review the values and goals before reviewing the document.
Certainly, that makes sense. So as sort of we presented before, we broke up sort of the larger task of figuring out how the oversight board, or whatever it is going to be named in the end, fits into all of the different parts of the broader system that we're looking at. So you've seen, as we've gone through the document previously, sections on how it will interact with other city entities, with county entities, state entities, federal entities, etc., and with other oversight entities. So that is how we've sort of structured the document. We've had an opportunity since we first presented it to the full committee to receive comments from other commission members that I think we're going to go over as we go through the document and approve each part of it. So we're actually going to be looking at Section A, the section that goes with the city government, last, because that is the section that we have the most comments from other commissioners on, and I think the section that will sort of require the most discussion for us to reach either a point of consensus or a point where we feel that we are ready to go ahead with a vote on any of the areas where we may not reach consensus. So yeah, that is how the document is laid out currently and how we plan to work through it this evening.
Thank you, Co-Chair Casey. Now, before starting the conversation around this document, the PAC will review the values and goals document it approved last March, which includes self-imposed standards for the future work of the PAC. As you review the document, please consider whether it meets your own standards, and you can adapt the document so that you are sure it does by the time you make a decision on approving it. I'll pass it to staff to review values and goals.
Yes, thank you. So the draft areas of agreement and the draft transition plan, when we get to that, are designed to be compliant with the values and goals as per the PAC's decision on March 30th, 2022. We'll do a quick scroll through, and then after that, I'll ask if subcommittee co-chairs KC or CMOB have specific items that they would like to highlight among the values, the goals, or the success criteria / considerations that may be particularly relevant for this document. So try to make it a little bit easier to read here. And there are 6 large blocks here. So a couple of them are broken up by a page break, just for those following along. And I'll pass it over to co-chair KC or co-chair CMOB if they'd like to point out any particular ones that are relevant to them. And this should be viewed as essentially questions that the document should ideally answer. Will the new system do the things that it's mentioned? Thanks.
So I think that the one that I think all of these are relevant to the work we've done in the subcommittee, but I think that the one that this subcommittee really is directly addressing is number 6, continual effectiveness, because we're looking at how can we take the system that has been built to address all of the other values and make sure that it is going to fit into this larger system that it's going to have to reckon with in one way or another, and draw the things from all of those other systems and put the things out into all of those other systems that will allow it to not just sort of survive, but continue to improve and iterate, and be able to be as effective as it can possibly be, hopefully for many years to come.
Thank you. Co-Chair Sima, would you like to add something?
I was actually on the same point. I think it all is incredible. It all adds context to the guidance that we're supposed to embody. However, number 6 being the most prescient for me, simply because it's just being able to make sure it's understanding continually that though we build something now, it'll need to be mobile and nimble and be able to continue to improve going into the future, rather than being fixed towards and then eventually outdating itself even.
Thank you, Co-Chair Sima. Okay, then we will now move to discuss the draft areas of agreements on broader system. We can cross-reference the outline and other resources if needed. As we go through, we will address proposed changes from co-chairs as well as from other members received in advance. The subcommittee can also make new proposed text changes. After completing this pass, we'll resolve any outstanding items flagged for further discussion and move into potentially referring the document to the full commission. I think that's okay. We ask you to follow, we're gonna start this discussion, and we ask you to follow our normal discussion rules. Please be brief each time you speak, even though you can speak multiple times. Please be facilitated and remember that we use a weighted stack in our discussions. Finally, please be forward-looking in your comments. Will the co-chairs like to get us started, please?
Certainly. Now I think we do need to pull up the document.
Just a moment, having some technical difficulties here.
Nope. No worries.
And from what I understand, we'll be starting with section E and working our way to the least problematic issues. I think that's starting from page 12.
All right, so here is section E. It is a relatively short section, so it reads, the Oversight Board should seek to be a model for other jurisdictions that review and adapt their own oversight systems. The Oversight Board and Bureau shall also maintain a working relationship with oversight entities outside of Portland to exchange information, best practices, and solutions to barriers faced by entities working on law enforcement oversight. The Oversight Board and Bureau shall maintain a working relationship with regional, national, and international groups focused on law enforcement oversight to have access to trainings and conferences that can help the Oversight Board perform its duties more effectively.
Is there any discussion question? I know there is a comment by Co-Chair Debbie.
So when I read this, I wondered if we meant adopt or adapt.
I think adapt makes more sense in this context, although there's another word that could make that clearer. I think it's really meant so to express when they are attempting to make changes to their own oversight systems that may be inspired by our oversight system.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I just wanted to double check that because I thought, yeah, it might, we might be also talking about places that don't have one at all, but no, I think if we're talking about jurisdictions that are trying to update and improve, then that's the right word. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Dan?
Good evening, Dan Handelman. I use he, him pronouns, member of the commission. I had put, I don't remember if I put it down as a section F, as a separate section or not, but if it's supposed to be F, then we should have started for that first, about the board's relationship with other law enforcement agencies that aren't part of the county or the state. And I don't know what happened to that, so I'm not sure whether that's going to come up at another point in the discussion or whether I should be bringing it up now, but it was attached to this section when I sent it over.
What I understand, Commissioner Dan, we're gonna get to it, but I will pass it to the staff.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. In talking to co-chairs and putting this in order, it's just below here, Commissioner Dan, that it would come through before wrapping up the document, and the order is in the chat for sections. So the general overview is that each section within a section will go top to bottom, but go EDCBA and then circle back to the proposed new section and then do definitions. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Can we move on? Okay.
All right, so section D is relationship with the federal government. D1, obligation to follow federal law. The Oversight Board and Bureau are obligated to follow all federal laws, including the United States Constitution and protecting the rights of all parties under the U.S. Constitution, and the U.S. DOJ versus City of Portland Settlement Agreement. Implementation of the Oversight Board is obligated to follow the Settlement Agreement, paragraph 195. Since that's its own section, I'll stop there and see if anybody has any notes before I move on to the next section.
Thank you, Co-Chair Casey. Is there any comments, questions? Can we move on? Commissioner Catherine, do you have a question or comment?
Well, you must have been looking at my facial expression because I was just wondering about in the transition plan we had in our subcommittee, we had talked a little bit about the fact that the settlement agreement specifically talks about the need for IPR to conclude its work. And one of the things that we're talking about is at some point basically saying that IPR's work, if it's not concluded after a reasonable time, gets transferred over to the board and the new board and the new bureau. So that was the only question I had, is whether it's possible that to implement our, you know, what comes out of the transition plan, we might be proposing some kind of adjustment or depending on how that settlement agreement language is interpreted. So that was what I was wondering about, is whether we, you know, whether this sentence would allow us to propose perhaps a tweak or a change to the settlement agreement.
Thank you, Commissioner Catherine. Co-Chair Casey, did you have an answer?
So that would be my intention. And so if we're putting, for lack of a better term, legislative intention on the record, that's certainly what this section is intended to do. But if there is any wording that would make that clearer or do that better, I'm certainly open to it.
Commissioner Dan post something on the chat for suggesting text change.
Yeah, well, I welcome his suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I will ask if there is strong opposition to changing from what it was to the proposed change. Is there general agreement to changing from what it is right now to the proposed change? What is? Thank you. And now can we move on? Okay, thank you.
All right, D2, policy coordination and subject matter expertise. As per the areas of agreement on structural oversight, the board may officially endorse legislation/policy ideas and shall have the authority to testify in front of relevant government bodies and communicate its policy positions with employees and elected officials at any level of government. And this is one that is sort of mirrored throughout the various sections of this, just to, again, repeat what has already been said in these areas of agreement on structural oversight, and basically make it clear that the board is going to have sort of authority to make its own policy recommendations at whatever level of government has the ability and authority to implement those recommendations.
Thank you. Thank you, Co-Chair. Staff?
Yes, just two notes really quickly. One is that there is a highlighted portion in here that's in the comment that there's was a desire among members of, or at least the co-chairs of the subcommittee, to change it to include appointed officials, but because this is a copied and pasted text from another document, effectively because it's mirrored not only in different sections of this document, but between structural oversight and this document, effectively changing it there is the next step if there is interest, and then that would be reflected here. So that's one note. And then the other note is that there is some text that explains, contextualizes this more up in the introductory paragraphs, which we'll get to at the end of the review here. So if there's any questions about that, that might be helpful just to remember that there's something coming up in the intro paragraphs above section A. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Any questions, comments? Okay. Can we move on? Okay, thank you.
All right, section C, starting with the obligation to follow state law. The Oversight Board is obligated to follow all applicable state laws and rules, including the Oregon Constitution, and protecting the rights of all parties under the state constitution, collective bargaining agreements as per the Public Employees Collective Bargaining Act, public records and public meetings law, and as of July 1st, 2025, statewide discipline guides. And that refers to the discipline guide that is going to take effect at that time, that was created by state law and a group that was put into place by that law.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Casey, is there any questions, comments? Can we move on? Thank you.
All right, C2, policy coordination and subject matter expertise. And again, this is a mirror of the same section in the last bit. As per the areas of agreement on structural oversight, the board may officially endorse legislation/policy ideas and shall have the authority to testify in front of relevant government bodies and communicate its policy positions with employees and elected officials at any level of government.
Thank you. And because we're ready to review this, can we move on? Thank you.
C3, exchange of information with / about other law enforcement agencies. The Oversight Board and Bureau shall maintain a working relationship with the Oregon State Police, including the State Medical Examiner's Office, as well as the Department of Corrections, and with oversight groups for these entities. This relationship will be beneficial to the board fulfilling its duties due to police collaborations and police activity with relation to state-run jails, prisons, and detention centers. B, the Oversight Board and Bureau shall also maintain a working relationship with the Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, known as DPSST, including sharing information about cases in which officers were found to have committed misconduct and cases in which a finding of training failure was reached. This relationship shall benefit the community by promoting improvement in training and performance of officers.
Thank you. Is there questions, comments? Can we move on? Thank you.
C4, Employment Relations Board. The Oversight Board and Bureau shall maintain a working relationship with the State Employment Relations Board. This relationship will be beneficial to the board understanding arbitration and its role in the process of addressing allegations of officer misconduct. C5, support of state court consideration of cases involving officers or incidents subject to complaint. The board shall collaborate to the extent allowable under law with state courts and prosecutors, including information sharing where appropriate. To ensure officers' constitutional rights, in no case shall compelled testimony from officers be transferred by the Oversight Board.
Is there questions, comments? Can we move on?
All right, section B, relationship with the county government. B1 is the same section as previous, authorizing them to have officially endorsed legislation and testify in front of relevant government bodies. It is the same language as the last two sections.
Can we move on? Okay, next.
B2, District Attorney. The board shall collaborate to the extent allowable under law with the Multnomah, Clackamas, and Washington County District Attorney's offices, including information sharing where appropriate. To ensure officers' constitutional rights, in no cases shall compelled testimony from officers be transferred to DA's offices. And I'm going to take this one section by section because it's pretty dense.
Perfect. Thank you. Is there comment, questions for B2? Okay, can we move on? Okay, thank you.
All right, B2B. In the rare event that a subpoena is issued and needs to be enforced, the board shall apply to the appropriate county authority for the enforcement of a subpoena or to impose penalties for failure to obey a subpoena or order.
Is there comments, questions? Yes, Commissioner Dunn?
Well, I'm just realizing this is written in a passive voice. I think we mean if the board issues a subpoena, right? Or the board or the staff. So I think I'd suggest making it more active. So say that the board or staff issues which needs to be enforced.
I second that.
Thank you. Let me ask you, is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to the proposed change on B? Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Thank you. Can we move on? Thank you.
All right, section C of B2. The Oversight Board and Bureau shall exchange information with the district attorney's offices, including seeking access to court records and case information pertinent to complaints under investigation.
Is there questions, comments? Can we move on? Thank you.
Section D, the Oversight Board through legal counsel shall work with the district attorney's offices to determine appropriate disclosure of public records and protection of confidential information, including through clarifying or appealing to the DA's offices.
Do any of you have questions or comments? Can we move on? Thank you.
All right, B3, exchange of information with / about other law enforcement agencies. The Oversight Board and Bureau shall maintain a working relationship with the Multnomah, Clackamas, and Washington County Sheriff's offices, as well as each county's corrections agencies, and with the oversight groups for these entities. This relationship will be beneficial to the board fulfilling its duties due to police collaborations and joint operations and police activity with relation to county-run jails.
Do we have any questions, changes, or comments to B3? Can we move on?
B4, other county relationships. The Oversight Board and Bureau shall exchange information pertinent to complaints under investigation with the county's medical examiner's offices. The Oversight Board and Bureau may seek membership for a representative in Multnomah County's Local Public Safety Coordinating Council, or LPSC as they are commonly known, to assist with developing working relationships and exchanging information in pursuit of oversight goals and responsibilities.
Do any of you have comment, changes, questions for B4, A and B? Can we move on? Thank you. Oh, you know, let's take a short break. It's 7:13. Let's take a 7-minute break. We will come back at 7:20. Thank you. Thank you. Well, we'll continue with reviewing the document. And we will start with section A or section F, I guess. It's an additional section.
So I believe that we're actually going to be taking on section F with Commissioner Handelman's proposed addition. And before we go into A.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Seema.
All right, we ready to read?
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, so Commissioner Handelman proposed F over here, which is relationship with other municipalities and governments. It reads, for those agencies not addressed in other sections of this plan, the Oversight Board and Bureau shall also maintain a working relationship with law enforcement entities outside of Portland, including but not limited to those municipalities whose officers may engage with community members in Portland, private police, and private security agencies serving the public spaces.
Thank you, Co-Chair Sima. Is there any questions, comments, or changes to this new section F proposed by Commissioner Dan? Co-Chair Sima?
This is actually a question in Dan's wheelhouse.
Okay.
Collaborate on entities like this, but would this include like entities such as FBI agencies, JTTF entities that tend to collaborate with local and state law enforcement?
Is it okay for me to respond?
Yeah.
Well, the FBI is a federal agency, so that's covered in federal. But you know, I understand your question. Yeah, I think it says anything that's not covered in the document is covered in this section. So I think if we didn't mention the FBI and the federal one, then that should be covered in there, right? I'm also noticing that this section does not have the policy issues paragraph, and I was going to suggest later, but I might as well do it now, that maybe we should just have a broad paragraph at the beginning that says, for all of these sections, the board can work on policy issues and testify as per the other documents, and then we don't have to have it repeated 6 or 7 times in the document. That's just an idea to make the document shorter, and then not ignore it on this section. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, Co-Chair Sima?
Sorry, I couldn't find the raise hand for some reason. It all disappeared. It's an old, I'm using an old computer. It's acted weird. But does this also, what about clean and safe? Entities like that.
That's what I, when it says private security acting in public spaces, that's one of the things I was referring to indirectly.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it's good to be able to kind of talk about some of the examples and put it in the air.
Co-Chair Sima, do you have any suggestions to change what was proposed here? Or do you think what it is includes what you were asking for?
I think it includes it's being able to ask the question and actually hear it in practice, replied back saying that this section does cover it and utilizing some examples, some real world examples. So I'm content.
Thank you, Co-Chair Sima. And I know Commissioner Sophia, you wanted to ask a question or make a comment?
Yes, thank you. Since this is my first time seeing this, I wanted to ask, maybe an overall generalization of the purpose of this addition. I know Commissioner Dan put it in there, so I'm just trying to get an idea where it was coming from.
Do you have any suggestions?
I'm trying to understand. I'm looking at it, it's including but not limited to those municipalities whose officers may engage with community members in Portland. I'm just not understanding that part. So just asking for some information.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Commissioner Dan?
Well, so for instance, the Gresham police sometimes come into Portland or vice versa, and there are incidents where they use force on somebody together, and the board's going to have to investigate that. There's also, like it specifically mentions TriMet. There have been instances where TriMet police have used force on people or otherwise done stuff that's appeared to be misconduct, and Portland police were there. Now, Portland police aren't directly part of the TriMet police anymore, but that doesn't mean that that's not possible for them to be working together. So there are lots of other agencies that we haven't mentioned because we only talked about the sheriff's offices and the federal offices. that may be within the boundaries of Portland and interacting with the Portland community and the Portland police. Does that help, Commissioner Graham?
Yes, I'm just thinking that maybe the wording could be a little more precise, that's all, and I can't think of anything at the moment. Maybe saying something to the effect, municipalities officers may engage with community members in relation to policing. I'm just trying to make that relationship in that portion of the sentence. Trying to solidify it, that's all, because it just seemed a little off.
Is there any other suggestions? Yeah, Commissioner Dan?
Well, thank you, Commissioner Graham, for explaining the confusion. So, whose authors may interact with community members in Portland, Tri-Met Police and private security agencies serving public spaces, acting in official or quasi-official law enforcement capacity.
Can we also put after municipalities whose law enforcement officers, just to make that more clear? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional comments or changes or adding to the text? Any additional questions? Okay, thank you. Let me ask the questions. Is there a strong opposition to changing from as it was to the proposed change? Yes, staff?
So just to clarify, the question, are you asking for the entire section, right?
Correct. And adding, yeah, and the question is adding the entire section. You're right. The F is true because it didn't exist before. Is there a strong opposition to adding the entire section F with the changes that were suggesting? Is there a general agreement to adding the section F with all the comment and text changes? Thank you. Can we move on? Thank you. Now we're going to section A.
All right. Section A. The Oversight Board and City Government. A1 reads, general relationship with other parts of city government. A1A, the Oversight Board will be a part of city government subject to all laws, rules, and policies which affect city government generally, including the city charter, city code, and administrative rules such as human resources policy.
Is there any questions, comments? Can we move on? Oh, yeah. Commissioner Ajay, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I have a question. I was just wondering about the adherence to laws outside of the city and whether I don't know, maybe this isn't a good place to address it, but you know, given that for example, abortion laws, there are differences between municipalities and between states. And so yeah, I was wondering if there maybe, yeah, again, maybe this isn't the right place to put it, but how oversight affects the yeah, like how we would address laws that that don't apply to Portland, but that are still like trying to be enforced. Like there was a recent case. The reason why I even think about it is there was a recent case in California, which has quite liberal abortion laws, but they were they assisted with, you know, the prosecution of an abortion law violation of another state. Again, I don't, yeah, this might not be the place for it, but yeah, I guess I was just curious about how that might affect this.
Thank you. And Commissioner Ajay, would you like somebody to answer or just a comment?
I mean, if someone has an answer, but if not, we don't have to harp on it or anything.
Okay. Co-Chair Casey, Co-Chair Seema.
So my understanding of Oregon state law, at least as recently passed by the legislature, is that there is already a state law in place that would prevent those laws from being enforced by any entity in Oregon. So I think that our section that says that this this board will abide by the laws of the state would cover that. I think that's probably the best that we can do, because if the laws of the state ever change, then I think we're all in trouble.
Thank you. Thank you, Co-Chair. Is that okay, Commissioner Ajay? Perfect, thank you. Let me ask, can we move on? Okay, thank you.
Sorry. All right, so A1B, the Oversight Board will supervise an independent bureau as part of its charter mandated independent judgment, which includes non-interference in its required duties and roles from other parts of the city government. The director will be a bureau director as defined by the
Thank
charter.
you. Is there any comment, questions, or edits? Can we move on? Thank you.
A1C, the board will develop working relationships with other parts of city government to ensure its ability to participate in relevant city processes related to the tasks required of council, Bureau of Human Resources, City Attorney's Office, and Office of Government Relations.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Is there any questions, comments, or edits to see? Can we
A1D, the Oversight Board shall maintain a working relationship with other parts of the city government and work with those entities to ensure there is no duplication of names and titles, processes, and terminology. This process shall seek to avoid confusion and create clarity for the community.
Thank you. Is there any comment, questions, or edits to D? Can we move on? Thank you. Next.
All right, A2, impact of oversight board implementation on city advisory entities. A2A reads, many of the current advisory groups related to police and policing will not be directly impacted by implementation of the oversight board. A2B reads, the city has already determined that 2 of the remaining advisory groups related to police and policing, the Police Accountability Commission itself, and the Citizen Review Committee will sunset as part of the oversight board implementation.
Because it's a one big idea, before discussing, I think we should read the whole thing and then we come back and review the items. Thank you. Co-Chair Sima, can you continue C and D, please?
Yes. A2C reads, the Oversight Board and Bureau shall maintain a working relationship with other advisory committees related to police and policing. Representatives from the Oversight Board and other advisory committees will meet periodically in public to discuss emerging issues and police and policy concerns they have encountered in the course of their work. If meetings are not practical, at a minimum, they will share by email or other means information on those topics amongst themselves. This information will be reported back to members of the various advisory committees. They may choose to create joint study committees to research those issues and develop joint recommendations. A2D, framework for the independent and voluntary incorporation. Other advisory groups related to police and policing, whose functions incorporate officer accountability and or policy recommendations, may independently and voluntarily seek to include operations and request that the Oversight Board assume their duties. Subsection I,
Yes.
sorry,
Co-Chair
actually, yeah.
Sima, yeah, staff wants to say something.
Apologies. So as you'll all see in just a moment, when we show the track changes after going through all of A2, there are a lot of proposed changes. And so starting in D, and so this is the original version that was previously showing the if all changes were accepted version. Just a mistake on our part. So if we could start back at D, that this is the version as it is now is what is currently showing, if that makes sense. Sorry about that.
Yeah, absolutely. A2D, framework for independent and voluntary incorporation. Other advisory groups related to police and policing whose functions incorporate officer accountability and or policy recommendations may independently and voluntarily choose to pursue incorporation with the Oversight Board to provide themselves with increased independence, access to the board's investigatory and analytical resources, to avoid confusion from the public, and to be an efficient use of city resources in support of volunteers. Sorry, I'll try and read a little bit slower. I realize I went really fast for the ASL interpreters. Subsection I, this process would be initiated through mutual consent by the advisory group and the Oversight Board. 2, incorporation would include a guarantee of appointment as a board alternate and consideration by council of board membership for all members of the incorporated advisory group, which ensures continued full voting membership on the incorporated group. 3, incorporation would also include the maintenance of the incorporated group as a distinct and independent body for at least the length of one board term, 3 years. Other details, 4, other details would be developed between the incorporated group following their involuntary choice to pursue incorporation and the Oversight Board. That was all of D. A2E, after the oversight board has been implemented for at least 3 years, it may undertake a review of all advisory groups related to police and policing, including communicating directly and transparently with volunteers serving on those groups, and may make recommendations to the mayor and or city council regarding how the different aspects of the current oversight system will function or cease to function, including how and when to wind down the current oversight systems. A2F, prior to establishing any new advisory groups related to police or policing, the mayor and or city council shall discuss the proposal with the oversight board and give sufficient time for response.
Thank you, Co-Chair Sima. Now we can get back to review section by section. And there is a comment on B. I think we can. Is there any, let me ask questioning, is there any comments, edits, or questions? Yes, staff?
Yes, so on the last full commission meeting on June 29th, while reviewing the transition plan, there was a request, which I think is similar here, to change the verb sunset to conclude. And it was done as one big, one question, but everywhere the word appeared was as a verb was changed. So just wanted to flag that if that is to be proposed here, that it could be done as one decision as opposed to every time it comes up.
Thank you. Is there any suggestion to change the word sunset? Yeah, Commissioner Charlie?
Right, I had brought that up on the transition document because it feel changing to conclude makes it clear. The sunset feels sunset to me doesn't feel final. I mean, the sun will rise. And I had to question what do they mean by sunset? It wasn't a common use as far as I experienced. And it's conclude just sounds a little more, I don't know, professional, I guess.
Thank you, Commissioner Charlie. Let me ask the question. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to the proposed change? And I will say every time the word sunset is in the document to use the word conclude. Is there general agreement to changing from what it was to the proposed change, and then every part of the document where it says sunset, we can use the word conclude? Thank you. Can we move on? Thank you. Let's go, because everything was already read. I'm gonna just ask the questions. Is there any comment, questions, or edits for section C? Can we move on? Thank you. Because D is big, I will ask only D, and then I will go to E and the other paragraphs. I would just ask for D because it has some suggestions on changing. Is there any, I will ask first, is there any questions, edits, or comment to section D? Yes, staff?
Yeah, just wanted to note that it's very hard to visually display this. Sometimes just wanted to flag, there are two proposed changes here. And so one of them is what's showing in the track change, which is to remove this highlighted text from choose to pursue all the way to volunteers, the sort of rationale sentence, and then add in seek to conclude operations and request that the oversight board assume their duties. There is also and because it was framed as a suggestion here, there's a proposed second change, which is in the right side, but the proposed change right now would be this one that's showing on screen. So just wanted to flag that and be fully transparent that there were two different suggestions made and why and how it's showing. And the other thing that may be helpful is if there's a confusion around any part of this, we'll show as much of the other parts as possible, because these subsections, Roman 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5 are here. They may provide some context to understanding this. So if anyone needs that to be scrolled, please just ask.
Yes, thank you, staff. Commissioner Dan?
Hi. Yeah, well, my suggestion, which is in the comments in the right side of the document there, I would like to read that into the record now so that people can consider it, because it's an alternative plan to what's being proposed here. And if we go ahead and make this track change, then my proposal doesn't make any sense anymore. So are we able to pull that back up, staff?
Just a moment, yes.
So my proposal was, and I wrote, I strongly suggest using this language, if as the new board solidifies its work, it is found that other advisory groups working on police accountability and police policy recommendations are unable to continue functioning, the board may consider incorporating those other bodies' work into their system, so long as there is capacity to do so. The body that is no longer fully functional, or the board, may begin the process to examine the feasibility of incorporating such work. And then we would have to rewrite the rest of the section to follow that. But this is, I think this is a less, for those of you who weren't at the subcommittee meetings, this is a less, I think, invasive way to try to deal with the advisory groups that aren't necessarily working on oversight, and to say, well, there used to be this advisory group that did this work, but they're not really functioning anymore. Is this something that the board can take on? Instead of saying we're going to absorb people in, we're going to make them members of the new board, and use our staff time for what their staff time is now doing, which I think will just complicate the focused mission that's written in the charter about what the oversight board is supposed to do. So that's why I'm proposing language like this. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan. Co-Chair Casey?
So I think at least as written, this would actually make it so that the other entities and the board itself would have less agency to make the decision of when something like this would happen. Because as written, it says that they could only do this if there is a finding, and I don't know who would make this finding, that the entity sort of ceased to function. So if there was an entity that said, we'd love to be a part of the board, like we are still functioning, but we think our function would be more appropriate under the board, there would no longer be any sort of mechanism for that to happen. So it seems like really restrictive language to me in terms of when a sort of merger like this could occur.
Thank you, Co-Chair Casey. Is there any other additional comment or questions? Because there are different changes here. I will start just with the change of Commissioner Debbie suggest, and is, I think, highlighted right now. I will ask just for that suggestion. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Is there general agreement to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Thank you. Can we move on? Okay. Okay, let's go to the other part then. Yes, co-chair team?
So then, do I understand correctly that then Commissioner Handelman's suggestion is just abandoned? I thought that we had sort of two different suggestions that were being considered, and to be honest, I'm totally confused by the whole thing. So if everybody else is tracking this really well, then that's great, but I'm sure not.
Thank you. Now we'll pass the staff to answer your question, co-chair team.
Yeah, so as of right now, the text reads this for this section. And then because facilitator Victoria just asked, can we move on? That was to allow the conversation to proceed to the Roman numerals 1, 2, 3. Certainly there's opportunities in this conversation to circle back to anything for any member if there's a proposed change later on, but this is the text as it presently reads based on the request for consensus that was just made and achieved. And then the can we move on question was essentially directing the conversation to proceed to this part down below. Does that answer the question, Commissioner Tim? Co-Chair Tim, sorry.
I guess so. I must have misunderstood that it seemed like there were two different proposals. If Commissioner Handelman feels like his idea was his thought was satisfied or whatever, then that's great. I won't hold things up any longer.
Commissioner Dunn?
Well, actually, I stood aside. I don't know, this is new to you, Commissioner Pitts, but we came up with a gesture of holding your hand under your nose if you want to stand aside, which is one of the things you can do in consensus. I didn't want to block consensus. So no, it did not satisfy my concerns, but I'm hoping that maybe these other changes will move us towards something that where it's a compromise between what I suggested and what's there now. So I'm waiting to see what we got. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Dunn. Then we're gonna review this section. And Commissioner Dunn, if you have any suggestions to edit and make changes to this section, please. Can you provide the edits or the changes based on your comments?
Well, I'm hoping that we can read this in the record first. These are changes that we got a couple of minutes before the meeting, and so I haven't had a chance to see it. I'm thinking a lot of other people haven't had a chance to see them yet. So maybe you can read them in, and if we have suggestions, anybody can jump in, right?
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments of the following Roman numbers?
I'm sorry, could you just bear 1 second? It's city accounts are being forced to do a quick verification at the worst possible time. So apologies for this, but I can't show the screen until I do that. Sorry.
That's okay.
And that should work. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Co-chair is can you read it? Oh, co-chair Debbie, go ahead.
Oh, I was just, let one of the subcommittee co-chairs read it. I was just going to make a comment on my rationale for the addition in number Roman numeral 1.
Okay. Or anybody can read it, and then we can go to comments and edits and questions.
Okay, since my microphone's on, I'll read it. This process would be initiated through mutual consent by the advisory group and the oversight board. And I probably, if we're going to add that last phrase, we should get rid of the other and the bureau associated with the advisory group. And the reason I suggested this is something I mentioned on the subcommittee meeting is that some of these advisory groups that I think we're talking about are actually advisory groups that the police bureau has decided are good to have. For example, and I mean, along with other decision makers, but for example, the Training Advisory Council, I mean, there's a group of community members who advise the training division, whatever it's called, from the police bureau on how they, conduct their training. Well, so if the police bureau still wants to have that.
Commissioner Debbie, I think she got.
Yeah.
Maybe you turn off your camera. Go ahead, maybe. Go ahead.
I'll turn off my video, maybe that'll help.
Sure.
So yeah, so I just feel like if the police bureau wants to have advisory groups, the advisory group shouldn't just be able to, willy-nilly decide that they're not going to be there anymore. The bureau should be consulted on the decision. That's why I added that part.
Thank you. Is there any additional comment, questions, just to the number 1? Or edits? As Commissioner Debbie suggested. Okay, is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to the new proposed change? Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Okay, thank you. Okay. Can we move on to number 2? Let me, Commissioner Jumi, are you in a strong opposition or do you agree? No, you agree?
I agree. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Okay, number 2.
I'll read number 2. I think I have a question on number 1 at some point, but I'll go ahead and read number 2 and make room for us to backtrack if we need to.
Okay, hold on. If you have question on number 1, we need to go to number 1.
Is that all right? Okay.
Yeah,
I
go
appreciate
ahead. It's okay.
There's a concern that would when it says this process would be initiated through mutual consent, does that even allow does the proposed change allow Portland Police Bureau to veto any incorporation in there too? Because it says and the bureau associated with the advisory group as well.
Yes, I will pass it first to Commissioner Debbie because she's the one who suggested the change, and then to the other commissioners. Commissioner Debbie?
So even though we're going to have this oversight board responsible for handling complaints of police misconduct, the oversight board doesn't have authority over the entire police bureau. And so if the police bureau wants to have an advisory committee focused on training or their focused intervention team or whatever, or their equity plan, I mean, it seems to me that that's still their decision as a bureau. And so that they, the oversight board isn't taking over the police bureau, I guess is what I'm saying. And so the oversight board's taking over the complaints and discipline and all that stuff, but not everything else. And so that's how come with these advisory groups that are covering other issues besides the complaints, the police bureau should still be allowed to have those. So hope that makes sense. It looks like some others have comments as well.
Thank you, Co-Chair Debbie. I will pass it to Commissioner Jumi first and then Commissioner Sophia.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think just echoing what Commissioner Debbie said, looking at the structure of the rest of this document, right? Let's say we didn't have this provision here. The police bureau could just as easily, come back, recreate the same body. We'd have, this mandatory comment period, and then they could just reconstitute whatever body applied for membership in the PAC. So I kind of am sympathetic to Commissioner Seemob's concern about giving the Bureau veto power over, assuming these responsibilities. But I think in practice, I'm not sure it really matters, and it probably does make sense to have their buy-in rather than have the Bureau or mayor's office or city council just immediately reconstitute a body that had asked to be absorbed. So I don't know that it really has a functional impact, but I get the concern. I just don't personally think that functionally it really is going to change the dynamic. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Yumi. Commissioner Sophia?
Yes, I just had some comments about I'm trying to get an understanding. My question is, why would a police, I guess, appointed or advisory group want to be with the PAC? I mean, I don't see them. I mean, I see we're saying if they want to. I'm not sure why they would, if they felt that they were working as an advisory board for the police, why they would want to move over as a group. So I'm not seeing how that might be a problem, but I just don't see how that would even work. I do understand, knowing that the police have a right to have their own advisory committees and whatnot. And if a agency or if a group decided they wanted to be part of the board, why would I'm trying to understand the confusion. It seems confusing to me that a board would want to a group would want to be a part of the board. First of all, they would have to say they would want to be, and they would have to say it as a group rather than an individual, right? And I do understand having coordination with the whatever division they might be under, because I think there needs to be some coordination with that as well. So I don't see anything wrong with the coordination, but I guess my thought is I don't see it being a problem. So that's my long story made short. It just doesn't seem like it's going to be a really big problem with a group who specifically join a group for the police, why they would even want to go over to the board. So that's my comment. Sorry, I rambled. Thank you.
That's okay, Commissioner Sophia. Thank you. Commissioner Dan?
Yeah, well, I appreciate Commissioner Glenn's comments, and I like I could live with the amendment that was proposed and consensus upon, but what I'm hoping is to add a sentence that would reflect the comments that was, I guess, voted out before. That is to say, I would like to see a sentence that says, one of the criteria would be whether the board has the capacity to absorb the work of the other body. Because I think to me, that's the main concern. When I've seen over and over again, advisory board, including ones that exist now, try to take on either new topics or say they're going to take on certain topics, and then those topics fall by the wayside, and then they don't finish, they don't complete what they promised to do. So if there's not a serious consideration whether the work will disappear altogether because it gets absorbed into the board, I think that's going to be problematic. So I would like to see a sentence that says one criteria will be whether there's capacity to take on the extra work.
Okay, I know staff will add that. Thank you, Commissioner Dan. Commissioner Sophia, and then staff.
I just wanted to thank Commissioner Dan for that comment. I do understand the concern, But my thought is, if this is going to be mutually agreed upon, in that mutuality, in that agreement, they would think about that kind of thing. That would be considered before they would take it on. So my thought is that the sentence wouldn't be necessary. I'm sure the board wouldn't take on something that they couldn't do. So it has to be mutually agreed upon, and the associated bureaus would have to talk about that. So I just think that's something that we probably should leave up to them in their negotiations. They should know better than to get themselves into something that they can't do. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Staff?
Yeah, this might seem like a very small thing. I just wanted to clarify that to something that Commissioner Yume said. There's a mandatory, alluded to a mandatory comment period that actually does not apply to the Portland Police Bureau in the current version of the text. It's down here under F. It only applies to the mayor and city council creating it, not if the PPB creates it. Just wanted to clarify that. And we haven't gotten to that part, but yeah.
Thank you, staff. Okay, let me ask, because number 1 has 2 parts. I'm gonna ask for the first one and then the second one separately. Number 1, and for the first change that's highlighted now, is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to the new proposed change that's highlighted right now? Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to the proposed change that's highlighted? Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Dunn.
I'm standing aside because I said I wouldn't accept this unless the other part was accepted. So I'll accept it if the other part's accepted.
Okay, but because the other part is at the end, that's why we're asking on the first. Okay, let me ask for Commissioner Dunn's sake. I'm gonna ask if we say the last part, the one criterion, is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to what is suggested? That's highlighted right now. Commissioner Sophia, your strong opposition? Okay. I don't know if the co-chairs, if we want to continue. Oh, co-chair Casey, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just also signifying opposition. I think I just came in a little late.
Oh, okay, perfect. We can continue discussing number 1, or we can come back at the end of review. It's up to the commissioners and the co-chairs. The co-chairs would like to continue discussing, or just leave it and review the others and come back to this one?
I think we should come back to it.
Okay, we didn't approve number 1. We will come back to this, continue discussing this one. Thank you. Let's go to number 2.
Appreciate it. It was worthwhile going back to number 1. Number 2, advisory group members with an interest in process complaints of police misconduct and wishing to apply for service on the oversight board would receive preference as long as their membership did not disrupt the board's diversity goals.
Staff, I will pass it to staff before asking question.
Yeah, so this is a proposed change to remove all of the highlighted text that is currently showing us 3, 4, and 5 in Roman numerals, but which, when it was read earlier, was showing us 2, 3, and 4, and replace it with the above that was just read into the record by co-chair Simon.
Thank you. Let me then ask, after this clarification, is there a question? Yes, co-chair Tim.
Yeah, thanks. I am more comfortable with how things are at this point because the whole guaranteed appointment really didn't sit well with me. I do just wonder what it really means to receive preference, if that's just sort of a wish that we're conveying that hopefully they would receive preference. It certainly doesn't seem like anything concrete. So just wanted to make sure I understood that correctly.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Co-Chair Debbie, you want to answer that?
So yeah, I'm the one who suggested this little passage here. And I was trying to think of sort of a middle ground between guaranteeing membership on the oversight board with then, finding some way to sort of honor the fact that the people on these advisory groups that are dissolving would have some sort of a way to become part of the oversight board. And so that was sort of the best I could come up with. And I'm certainly not wedded to that idea. I just was trying to find the middle ground. I do feel, just as it sounds like you do, that it's impractical to guarantee people, like, there could be 30 people I think they have up to 30 on the Training Advisory Council. Well, if you let all those people have, membership on the oversight board, you'd have quite a large group. And it just I couldn't figure out how it works. So this was my little comment.
Thank you, Co-Chair Debbie. Commissioner Monica?
Could we add, as long as our membership did not disrupt the board's diversity goals, and is it rules or rules of membership? Like I would not want an advisory group that is part of the police bureau and has had people that used to work in police now become part of the board as a way of putting people into this board and ignoring some of the rules and regulations that we've put in place for board membership. That would be my concern.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Debbie, Co-Chair Debbie?
Oh, I just want to make sure people saw Commissioner Yume's suggestion, but it looks like Samir's putting it in there right now, so that's good.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Co-Chair. Okay, is there additional questions, comments, or edits to number 2? Commissioner Sophia.
I thought maybe we could broaden that a little bit for board membership. I know it's not specified, but as an alternative or a board member. I don't know if that's practical. I know it was in some of the other verbiage, and I thought that might be another alternative to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Co-Chair Tim.
Sorry to speak so much, but I guess I just want to further my comment by just saying that I think that I have concerns with this whole preference at all, given that the community is trusting this new commission to be independent and to do things in a different way than things have always been done. So while I appreciate that there are many great people serving on these organizations right now, this does certainly take away a bit of the independence and the fresh start that I thought we were shooting for here.
And Co-Chair Tim, do you have any suggestions?
Not really a suggestion for change, I guess, just a concern with the entire idea of giving preference to people to be on the board.
Okay, thank you. There is a comment for Commissioner Sophia. And there is Commissioner Debbie, would you like to answer or make a comment since it was your suggestion?
Commissioner Sophia can go first.
Okay, Commissioner Sophia.
I thank you, Commissioner Debbie. Yeah, I was just trying to find some alternatives. I'm just saying maybe considered where possible. I don't know, instead of preference, I do see Commissioner Tim's concern. So that's just a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Dan.
Well, this is just a process point. I just want to be absolutely clear what you already said, Facilitator Lara, which is that if we approve this, the other 3 subparagraphs are going away. that right?
I haven't asked the question. I haven't never said that. The only one who explained that was staff, but I haven't even asked the question.
But is that what's coming up next? I just want to be clear as we're discussing this.
I don't know. I think I will ask first if this going away. I don't know. We're still in discussions. Maureen, when I got the questions, we can go that part. We will cross the bridge when we get there. Commissioner Debbie?
Okay, so I'm going to suggest that we just get rid of number 2. If an advisory group dissolves, then the members are free to apply just like anybody else in the city to be on the oversight board, and they can cite their recent service on the dissolved advisory group that's now gone as a sort of a point in their favor for being selected to be on the oversight board. So I agree with co-chair Tim that I wasn't crazy about this idea. I was just trying to find a middle ground, and so I would be totally happy to just get rid of it altogether. My suggestion.
Thank you. We have a new suggestion for co-chair Debbie, but I will pass it to staff first.
Yeah, so this actually moots the issue. The proposed change would be, so just so everyone knows, this, what was section 2 before and is now showing as 3 just because of the automatic renumbering, would be removed, and that this entire new text would also not be proposed, and so that could be mooted. So maybe I can if there's a reason to continue, meaning if there isn't consensus, there's maybe some more information to add, but I can wait to do that until after you ask facilitators if there is consensus on the revised proposed change. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. But I think we still have the comments and the discussion. Commissioner Jumi?
Yeah, so just 2 quick observations. And apologies if maybe this is where we're headed, but I think that also means we would need to remove sections 4 and 5, because if nobody from one of these organizations is going to automatically get membership or be able to automatically apply for membership, then I don't think we would be able to maintain the incorporated group as a distinct and independent body, because there would be no one from that incorporated group coming over. Also, just thought we should read into the record one of the Q&A questions or one of the Q&A comments saying from Corinne, I agree with Commissioner Tim that application to membership should not go through a preferential route for formal advisory council members.
Thank you, Commissioner Jumi. Is there any other, Commissioner Jumi, also you suggest that number 4 and number 5 is also cancel, correct?
Yes, I'm just thinking if we want to put something forward, we could just say we're going to delete this whole section 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Okay, I will do everything separate, but I just want to make sure we got your comment. And is there any more comments, questions, or edits? No? Okay, then now I'm gonna ask the question. Is there a strong opposition to eliminate it, what we can see at the computer as number 2 and number 3? Is there a general agreement to eliminate it, number 2 and number 3 that was highlighted in the document? Okay. Good, thank you. Now to the next one. Can you highlight it, please? That way it will be easier. Oh, Co-Chair Christian, go ahead.
Hi, sorry, I just wanted to check. I feel like Co-Chair Iona had given some alternative language about an individual being able to apply. I didn't know if we were going to add that or if that just didn't need to be added. I just wanted to check to make sure that wasn't an oversight before moving on.
Okay, and number 2 and number 3, or and number 1?
I believe it was for number 2, when they were talking about.
So I'm just gonna answer, sorry, I didn't raise
Yeah, there
my
you go. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Okay, Chair
on the-
raised that. Correct, Co-Chair Debbie?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary. I think I just was saying that, so if you were on an advisory committee that disappeared, and you wanted to be on the oversight board, you could fill out your application and say, and I should, you know, you should want to pick me because I did good service on another advisory committee. So I just think that should be something that would sort of happen naturally, yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Co-Chair Debbie. Commissioner Jumi?
Yeah, sorry, I guess I misspoke here. I got hung up on these numbers as well. What I meant to say is that 3 and 4, the incorporation paragraph should be taken out. I think number 5 is fine. I mean, we could take it out, but I don't think it's pertinent to this section that we're talking about deleting, if that makes sense.
Yes, then I will ask for, I already asked number 2, number 3. I will ask, okay, I will wait. Just ask.
Sorry, there's a lot going on. If you could just bear with so I can make sure
Sure.
everything's showing
Sure.
properly.
Yeah, we can wait. Yes, Co-Chair Casey.
I just want to mention that as a person who is very involved in the initial drafting of a lot of these sections, I think that a lot of this is a huge improvement over how they were initially drafted. And so I really appreciate everybody doing all of this work on them, because I am really more pleased with how they are looking as edited than the original versions that came out of my writing a lot of the time.
Thank you, Co-Chair Casey. And thank you for all the work you did too. Okay, next one, I'm gonna ask for number 4. And is there a strong opposition to eliminating number 4? Is there a general agreement to eliminating number 4? Thank you. Now we can go back to number 1, and we can ask the questions or continue with the discussion.
Facilitator,
Yes.
Victoria, I saw CMOB's hand up. Was that just?
Okay.
I just wanted to
Thank
make
you.
sure that's
Thank
mine.
you.
Okay.
Commissioner Co-Chair Sima, go ahead.
Thank you, Aimee. Actually, I mean, I'm kind of in between asking this and not. But you know, just taking a step back before proceeding to 4, you know, the oversight board, so would you guys consider it a possibility that that the OB could keep a group that was incorporated intact as a separate entity without like members automatically getting brought on and stuff, or even as a subcommittee?
Commissioner Jumi?
Thank you. I think my only thought on that is it kind of seems like that would require a complete overhaul of the like the sort of the board membership section, right? Because at that juncture, you would be talking about creating another level of membership that is not an alternate and is not a board member. And it seems to me that at that juncture, I'm not sure what aside from maybe the staff benefit or the benefit of having it under the umbrella of the new oversight board, functionally, it would not be part of the oversight board. It just seems like we don't really have a mechanism for that, is my personal opinion on that front.
Thank you, Commissioner Jumi. Commissioner Dunn?
Yeah, I think for one thing, part of what was just discussed is covered in what's now numbered number 4, but I think it's actually number 2, about other details being worked out. That's part one. The other thing is I was going to wait till we loop back to number one to say this again, but there was a committee called the Community Police Relations Committee that was part of the Human Rights Commission that studied the traffic stop data in the city of Portland and racial profiling. And it was assumed by a lot of people that when the DOJ agreement went into effect, the board that now is called the PCCEP would take on the role of looking at those data. They never did. They came together and dissolved over the course of the next 5 years. Then the PCCP was formed. They didn't look at those the traffic stop data until January of last year, 2022. And as they were gearing up to do that, they got sidetracked by the training slide conundrum that came up, where there was a horrible training slides that were investigated, and then they never got back to it. They got put on suspension, and this past week, it was announced that the PCCP is dissolving their racial equity subcommittee that was working on those data. So what I'm getting at is, people are well-intentioned and people think that they can take on this work, and then things change and it doesn't happen, and then you end up with nobody looking at traffic stop data. So I just want to caution against being too optimistic about giving this board more things to do than is already written in the charter. And that's another pitch for my addition of saying that capacity is one of the things that should be considered when they're deciding whether to help absorb the work of this other body, so that something doesn't stop happening because the board said they would do it and then they couldn't do it. So those, I hope that makes sense. Those are all interrelated in my mind. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Sima, Co-Chair Sima.
Yeah, the thing is, would this benefit like the structure of having board alternates? Because that is exactly what we're looking to do, is have these reserves, have these board alternates. And so, yeah, I mean, for instance, like the original version had it where members would become oversight board alternates, which would allow them to be full voting members of the new subcommittee. And then someone could also become oversight board members and do other oversight board things.
Thank you. Can we continue? Do we have a time check? Okay. I will ask the question, Commissioner Sima, again on number 4. Is that okay with you, or can we move on? Okay, okay. Number 4, is there a strong opposition to changing and erasing number 4? Is highlighted. Is there a general agreement to changing and erasing number 4? Thank you. Okay. Let's go to number 5, and then we will continue to number 1 for the comments that, okay, number 1. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to adding the one criterion will be the oversight board has the capacity to take on the work of advisory group? Is there a general agreement to adding this statement to number 1? Thank you. Can we continue number 1? Review the other part of number 1? Can we move on? Okay, thank you. Number 1, the first change. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was and add it to the proposed change? They say, and the Bureau associate with advisory group. Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to the proposed change from the advisory group? Okay. Can we move on to number 5? Okay, let's review number 5. Oh, 2E, I'm sorry. We move on number 5, correct?
Facilitator Victoria, there is no number 5. Did you mean E or?
E, I'm sorry, E. Sorry. Okay, we can go to E. It was read before, and there is changes here. Is there any comment, questions, edits? Okay, I'm gonna, Commissioner Dan.
I'm sorry, so there are proposed changes here. Are we going to read those into the record? Because it's different from what we read before.
Okay, you can read it. Anyone can read it. Okay.
All right, well, I turned my air conditioning on, sorry. It's 83 degrees in here, folks. So it says that after the Oversight Board has been implemented, no sooner than 2 years after the board has begun taking on complaints from the public, transition plan post-transition phase day 1, it may undertake a review of all advisory groups related to police and policing, including communicating directly and transparently with volunteers serving on those groups, and may make recommendations to Mayor and City Council regarding how the different aspects of current oversight system will function or cease to function, including how and when to wind down the current oversight systems. And I propose this change, and the reason is that, as we've been talking about, many of the other advisory groups are not oversight groups in the way I think that the charter amendment says, and the way the City Council advised us to think about concluding the work of those other oversight boards. That even the focused intervention team oversight group is not an oversight group in the same way that this board is going to be overseeing the police. They're not looking at whether the focused intervention team is violating police policies. So it's a different use of the word oversight. And I think that's partly where the confusion is coming from, is our very messy language of English. So that's why I made this proposal, to try to be a little clearer, and maybe it makes it worse. I don't know.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan, for reading it and explaining it. I'm gonna do 2 parts on E. The first one is highlighted. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to what it is now? And this is the part that's highlighted. Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to what it is now? Thank you. The next, and E, I'm gonna ask the question, the next change is gonna be highlighted. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to what it is adding now? Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to what it is now? Thank you. Can we move on? Okay, let's go to F. Is there any comments, changes, or edits? Okay. No. Can we move on? Okay. Thank you. A3.
All right. A3, impact of oversight board implementation on city staff entities. A3A, Portland Police Bureau, PPB, and Internal Affairs. A3AI. The oversight board will investigate most complaint types, which currently are handled by Portland Police Bureau, Internal Affairs. Subsection II. The only complaint types which currently go to Portland Police Bureau Internal Affairs that would not go to the Oversight Board are complaints filed by officers about conduct not affecting any community member, where the complainant officer does not choose to have the board investigate. For these cases, this work shall be transferred to Bureau of Human Resources or equivalent agency within city government, but outside of both Portland Police Bureau and Oversight Board. In subsection III. Internal Affairs shall conclude following the creation of the board and conclusion of its work addressing complaints received. Oh yeah. Prior to the Oversight Board's full implementation, cease operating to the extent possible based on how the city requires bureaus to handle internal complaints.
Thank you. Is there comments, staff?
Yeah, sorry, this second part, I believe, and Commissioner Dan just clarify, my understanding is that it's designed to replace everything from conclude on to implementation. Is that correct, Commissioner Dan?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so there's and the other thing is that the conclude has already occurred because that was approved earlier. It's just going to make that change, and then we'll show the track change to demonstrate the proposed change now.
Okay, in the meantime, is there any, Commissioner Yumi?
Thank you. So I guess one quick suggestion and perhaps one question. So as a suggestion, I think I would suggest changing that from complainant officer to bureau employee, just because my understanding is that IA and the current PRB system handles officer complaints against other bureau employees or other bureau employees against officer complaints. I think most typically those are courtesy complaints. So, you know, officer so-and-so yelled at me, yelled at someone in the records department or whatever. So that's a stylistic change. I guess I've mentioned this a couple of times as a non-commission member, but I will raise the question, and maybe someone can just clarify for me why we are mandating that internal affairs cease investigating these kind of bureau complaints and pushing that to an outside agency. I guess that's fine, you know, to a certain extent, in the sense that I wasn't here for those deliberations, but it does seem like that's something that could be met with further resistance, and it's not necessarily as germane to the core component of our work, which is creating a new system of oversight for civilian interactions. So I guess if someone can answer that question, I'd love to hear the rationale.
Thank you, Commissioner Yumi. I think Commissioner Dan can answer your question.
Well, my understanding was that the subcommittee wanted to stop there from being some of the, I guess, political stuff that was going on inside the police bureau, which we've eliminated to some extent by giving officers the option to go to the board with these kinds of complaints. But if we could staff, if you can put that back up on the screen again. You asked me a question and I didn't fully understand the meaning of your question, because the second sentence of the previous paragraph, the one that says, for these cases, the work will be transferred to the Bureau of Human Resources. My proposed change would replace that sentence as well, because that wouldn't be appropriate anymore. And say, so if we're saying that they will cease operating based on how the city requires bureaus to handle internal complaints, then we should just get rid of that sentence that says, for these cases, this work will be transferred to blah, blah. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan. In the meantime, the staff track the suggestions. Is there any other questions, comments, or edits to A, number 1 and 2, Romans? Yeah, Commissioner Catherine, and then Co-Chair Debbie.
Yeah, I guess I think that the question that Yumi raised, Commissioner Yumi raised, remains unanswered. And I guess I have the same question, which is, why, as the PAC, why do we care whether internal affairs investigates these complaints that are outside of the new board's jurisdiction, or some other entity does that? What is, what is driving that recommendation, and why is that within the scope of our work to make that recommendation?
Thank you. And I will pass it to Commissioner Debbie and then Commissioner Sima, Co-Chair Sima.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing and just wondering if we should maybe think about changing the word shall, the internal affairs shall cease operating, and instead like change it to may, in case the police bureau decides that they want to do something different than the internal affairs division or whatever it is, have something other than them doing the complaints that are dealing with inter-employee issues.
Thank you, Commissioner Debbie. Co-Chair Sima?
Well, and I really appreciate, especially the clarifying question that Commissioner McDowell had put up just now, because I think that really is like the center. That's the patty in the burger. Essentially, internal affairs exists to perform a role that we're essentially going to mostly be taking on. So my understanding, the reason why I would be for concluding internal affairs is because functionally, any internal affairs bureau that's not going to do the work that we're going to be taking on should be concluded at least as a name, and they can take on a name in a direction that better suits the function of the work that they'll be taking on. But essentially, I think it's also a great example of the work that we're actually taking on and the importance of it as well. I don't want to feel like we'd even be, I feel like we'd even be diluting the existence of this new board, this oversight board, by maintaining in internal affairs, even by name, though they functionally won't be doing the work that, essentially, again, like I said, we'd be taking on.
Thank you. Just who else?
I
Is there
did,
any?
I
Yeah.
did see staff's hand. up.
Staff has a hand up, but doesn't have it anymore. Staff?
Yeah, it's in the exhibit A to Council Resolution 37548 in terms of the question about whether this fits into the scope of work, including how the different aspects of the current oversight system will function or cease to function. Several briefings had been given to the PAC in which internal affairs was listed as a part of the current oversight system. That doesn't mean that it has to function or cease to function. That's a decision that's fully within the PAC's hands. But that's where, just to clarify where that came from, it's Resolution 37548 Exhibit A. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Thank you, Ayomide. Okay, I can ask the questions now if there are no more comments. Edits. Okay. We're gonna do for a couple, yeah, Co-Chair Christian.
Hi, sorry, thanks. I just wanted to say that I don't know if it got put into the document, but I support Co-Chair Iona's suggestion of changing the shall to a may, because especially given I feel like we've gone back and forth on this a little bit. It's been a topic of discussion for a while, and we talked about it a little bit during the Officer Accountability Subcommittee, and then it got kicked because there's kind of been questions about a lot of things that we're asking right now. And I think given the comment from I forget there was the legal comment, I forget the name of the person who put it in, but it was on here a moment ago, and I feel like it might be good to have that leeway in case the police bureau has an opinion on this. And I was part of writing a little bit of this, and I was supportive back then of also checking with them on this prior to like fully saying no internal affairs or like having them conclude. I also think that I understand as well that we will be taking on a lot of their work, which is part of why I'm sort of like in between. But I think having that like gap open to like have that conversation would be good. So I feel like the May leaves that in there. I just want to say that. Thank you.
Victoria, you're muted if you were trying to talk.
Oh, yes, thank you,
Sophia.
thank you. Commissioner Sophia, thank you.
I'm just listening to everyone's comments and I'm trying to remember, we did interview Internal Affairs, I believe, at the beginning. And I can't remember the details of that, but the person, if I'm remembering correctly, the person in charge was agreeable to combining, if I'm not correct. I don't know. I just had this feeling that was discussed and that they were amenable to that, but I could be wrong. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we have a couple of comments, and for the staff, I just want to time check. We will continue working on the document, but I want everybody to be aware, right? That's 8:47 and we have all these comments. Okay. Commissioner Monica?
I guess if somebody knows internal, what are all the roles that Internal Affairs does, and are we eliminating a system that does things that are not going to be in the purview of the board? I guess that's the big question.
Yes. And Commissioner Jumi, you want to answer that question?
I'll answer to the best of my knowledge, yeah, which is I believe that IA's purview is basically, staff is adding something here as well. So there's the officer complaints involving the public, and then there are internal bureau complaints involving two or more bureau employees. Obviously, we're going to take over, or the new body, I should say, is going to take over complaints involving the public. And so really the question is, do we direct IA to continue handling internal complaints? Do we direct that those be transferred somewhere else, or do we give the Bureau some discretion in that regard? And I guess my only thought on this is that in terms of this thing is something that has to be bargained, and it has to go through council, and it has to go through a bunch of other mechanisms. And I think if we have a strong reason for wanting to take that away from Internal Affairs, then I will support that. But I would express maybe a caution that the more we start meddling with the pieces inside the Bureau that are not necessarily our purview, I think the more we could engender some pushback to the system as a whole. And so I think that's my only concern there. I think there's also an argument to be made that, these systems are transitory, and the Bureau having some mechanism in place if something were ever to change is not necessarily a bad thing. But that's perhaps a more grim analysis. I'm more thinking that I'm not sure that we have the purview to say, well, this should go to a different department if it's not part of our brief. But that's my personal opinion.
Thank you, Commissioner Jumi. Commissioner Sima?
Yeah, appreciate, Commissioner Delgado's comments. And I think the caution, should be acknowledged. A couple of things is we presented to city council that internal affairs, and I'm sorry, am I breaking up?
Yeah, you were breaking up. If you can repeat what you were saying, please.
Yes, sorry about that. we presented to city council that, you know, our intention is to conclude internal affairs. And the second thing would be, you know, we're presenting recommendations, strong recommendations to city council. So I think, you know, it's coming to the end and being able to say that part of the accountability system that did not work appropriately still maintain a form of an identity is maybe a bit counter to how we started.
Thank you, Commissioner Sima. Commissioner Dan?
Yeah, well, I think what we haven't talked about in specifics is the words that in the comment from Deputy City Attorney Sarah Ames, who made it clear that the Bureau of Human Resources, which was suggested as an alternative to internal affairs, doesn't do its own investigations. And they ask that every bureau in the city have some kind of internal investigatory body to investigate them, and then they will help process those complaints and impose the discipline that is appropriate, if it's appropriate. So the Bureau is going to have some kind of internal mechanism, whatever it's called. You know, if it would make Commissioner Hussaini happy to propose a new name for internal affairs, we can do that, but I don't really see the value in it. I think the internal affairs will actually be a better name for it once the new board's in place, because it will be fully internal. Right now, internal affairs investigating things that happen externally to the police bureau. So it's actually a good name for it if it remains in place to do what it's supposed to be doing, which is only police on police complaints. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan. Commissioner Fate?
I think that we should just move section 2. So I'm looking at A3A. If 2 were to go first, the only complaint types which currently go to PPV Internal Affairs that would not go to the Oversight Board are complaints filed by Bureau employees. Then we are emphasizing, I think it's none of our business at this point after that sentence. Our point is the community complaints. And so I think if we lead with that, I think it's really clear. It's like how the police decide to handle internal affairs, they can decide. But in terms of making our document tenable, I would hate for this to be an arguing point when really the thing we're number one concerned about is community oversight. So oversight of police. So I guess my suggestion would be to just make the language strong and clear here of the only complaint types which currently go to PPP, blah, 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 will go to the, we're just explicitly stating like the only type that will stay in internal affairs are internal issues. So that's my suggested edit.
Thank you, Commissioner Fate. Commissioner, and I just want to do a time check. It's 8:54. We can continue discussing this, and the co-chairs have the ability to say, we move on, we continue discussing, but okay, let's keep going. Commissioner Angie?
I don't have a lot to say. I'm just 100% agree with Commissioner Faith on her point of view with having just making it as simple as possible and saying what's going to stay in internal review, internal affairs, and what we'll take on. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Angie. Commissioner Catherine?
I also wanted to say that I agreed with Commissioner Faith's comment, and would just add that I think in addition to potentially clarifying 2, we would just delete 3.
Okay, that's a suggestion, deleting 3. And I know Co-Chair Debbie say we should take public comment, but if we can finish at least this A, if it's close to get finished, that would be great. That way we don't have to get back. I mean, at least this portion. Staff?
Yeah, so just to clarify, after this, there is this 3-sentence system, your sentence, 3-line sentence that you're looking at, and then the intro text, and that's all that remains after this. So it may be helpful to consider whether working that through. Also, just a suggestion, it's very hard to visually display a move without it superseding all the other track changes. So if whenever it gets to the point of asking for questions, Facilitator Victoria, if you could just ask for the proposed move to swap 1 and 2.
Okay, I'm gonna make a note. I can ask for the question now. There is a couple of questions in this area. Just bear with me. The first questions will be, the first suggestion is to move number 2 to number 1. And is there a strong opposition to move number 2 to number 1? Is there a general agreement to move number 2 to move number 1? Thank you. That's the first question. And then the second question is the changes to number 2. Okay. Thank you, staff. The second question is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to the proposed change this highlighted only the Save Bureau employees? Is there a general agreement to changing from what it was to the new changes Bureau employees? Thank you. Then this has a third question on number 1. Oh, this highlighted 2. Is there, I'm gonna ask the question to cancel what is highlighted right now. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, okay. Is there a strong opposition to cancel the last part of number 1 and the last part and the middle part on number 3? Yeah. And substitute with the last sentence. Is there a general agreement to cancel the last part on number 1 and the middle part on number 3, adding the last sentence? Okay, thank you. And then the question in number 3, is there a strong opposition to changing the word shall for the word may? Is there general agreement to changing the word shall? Oh, I'm sorry. There is a strong opposition. Commissioner Sophia.
I just wanted to ask, now that we've clarified what we will be doing, I think shall still be appropriate.
Okay. There is a suggestion to keep the word shall instead of may. Commissioner Fate.
I think we had a counter suggestion as well from Commissioner Catherine to delete section 3.
Oh, yeah. Then Commissioner Sophia, would you, I'm gonna ask the question to cancel number 3 and see how it goes. Is there a strong opposition to cancel number 3? Is there a general agreement to cancel number 3? Okay, number 3 is canceled. Thank you. And because the staff let us know that the next one, can we move on to review just B? Okay. And then we can stop and go to public comment, but let's review number B. And please, Commissioner Casey, Co-Chair Casey or Co-Chair Sima, can you read B?
Certainly. B, other parts of the Portland Police Bureau. The Oversight Board and Bureau will maintain a working relationship with the PPB Professional Standards Division, including staff working on the Employee Information System.
Is there comment, questions, edits? Can we move on? Okay. There is one more thing for the document. But also stuff we need to get back. Okay, no, one more thing. Yes, Commissioner Casey.
You're on mute, Commissioner Casey.
Apologies. Sorry. The Police Accountability Commission is tasked with developing the new police accountability system in Portland, including the new Community Police Oversight Board. As part of ensuring the Oversight Board and Bureau can be effective in completing their duties, the Commission was also tasked with determining appropriate involvement between the new system and other parts of city government, as well as relationships with other levels of government. The Commission was also tasked with determining how implementation of the new system will impact parts of the current police oversight system in the city, including determining which parts will continue or cease to function and how. The PAC's proposed system will be bound by all relevant law and regulations, including at the federal, state, county, and city levels. It will be a part of the City of Portland government with independent judgment guaranteed in the charter. It will also have strong working relationships with many other layers of government, as described below. The Oversight Board will make clear in its discussions with any level of government that it is representing its own views and not serving as a representative of the city government.
Thank you, Co-Chair Casey. Staff?
Yes, two quick things. One, that very last sentence is what I was referring to at the very beginning of the document, as there's additional context on that highlighted portion from structural oversight that may be relevant here. Again, just to remind everyone what that section is, it's the highlighted section here. And that there was context added in the intro paragraphs with the last sentence here. And then the other thing that may be relevant is there was a proposal just in terms of formatting and shortening the document earlier from Commissioner Dan to move all those yellow highlighted up to a single reference in this intro paragraph, and that could be done as one single decision of the PAC as well, if the members would like to do that or not.
Thank you. Staff, should I ask two questions or one?
Just one, or I mean the same strong opposition general agreement, but just one set.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask the question. Is there any comments, question before I ask the questions? Comment, questions, or edits to the introduction? Yes, Commissioner Dan?
Yeah, again, process question. What I understand staff just said is that if what we're going to try to consensus on now is whether to move all those paragraphs about relaying the board's opinion to the other governmental bodies into this intro and moving it from all the other places in the document. At the same time, we're voting to approve the intro. Is that what you're asking us to do now?
I haven't asked you to the question. I just, if there anybody has additional comments or questions or edits beside the one the staff asked. No, okay. Then it will be separate. I have to ask two questions. And the first one is, let me highlight. Is there a strong opposition to adding this sentence in order to, as the part of the structural oversight, as in the beginning as the proposed change? Is there a general agreement to add in this part in the intro as the proposed change? Thank you. And then the next one. Okay. Is there a strong opposition to adding this paragraph as the proposed change? Oh, we did that. Okay. What is the second one? I'm confused. The other part. Okay. Let me see.
Isn't it just the approval of the whole?
The whole.
Should-
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there a strong opposition to approve the whole intro as it is right now? Is there a general agreement to approve the whole intro as it is right now? Thank you. I want staff to check because I think there was the only thing to approve in the document is one thing on A that we say we will come back, but I don't know if we already did it.
There was a section that it was the proposed change to add the one criterion sentence. Is what the only thing that was flagged for further discussion.
Okay.
I'm gonna quickly screen share just to show that.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
under A, so this is section A2, part D, Roman 1.
Okay, thank you. Then this document is finished. Let me go to the next part. The commission has completed discussion on the document, and next on the agenda is discussing whether the commission should approve the draft areas of agreements on broader system with all the changes we have made today incorporated into the text. There is
Excuse me, Victoria.
Yes.
Are we supposed to have public comment for this particular portion too? For them, before approval?
The staff say no public comment. That's why I went to that, but maybe I understand wrong. Otherwise, I would do.
No, there's public comment before the approval.
Yes.
Okay.
Questions for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, but what I was reading is before public comment, correct? Oh, no.
For potential approval?
Yeah, and then we go to public comment. Yeah, I was reading can I finish reading?
Yes. Okay,
Because
yeah,
the
I'm
agenda-
sorry. I just wanted to make sure.
No, yeah, I just reading the agenda. Okay. Okay, sorry. I was confused. The commission has completed discussion on the document, and next to agenda is discussing whatever the commission should approve the draft areas of agreement on a broader system with all the changes we have made today incorporated into the text. There is a potential agreements documents that was circulated that gives some context as this decision. Before seeing if there is consensus around approving these documents, we're going to hear from the public. After that, we will review the PAC values and goals. Finally, we'll ask if members want to make any final tweaks and then ask if they are ready to make a decision. Now we will take public comment on this document, refer to this document. And please, we invite members of the public to make comments and to talk about what we discussed today. We ask members of the public to keep their comments to 2 minutes in length and keep their comments focused on the draft document. You can raise your hand in Zoom when you like to be called on. Okay, I don't see anybody raising their hand, but we can give a couple more seconds to see if somebody from the public wants to comment. No? Okay, I don't see anybody. Now we go to the part, and I just reading here. We already look at the values and goals, but if any members would like to see it again, please raise your hand. No, okay. Now I'm gonna ask the question. Okay. Is there any strong opposition to approving the draft areas of agreement on a broader system with all the changes we have made today incorporated into the text? Is there a general agreement around approving these documents with all the changes we have made today incorporated into the text? Congratulations. There is a consensus and this document is approved. Okay. The next item in the agenda, I think we're going to okay. We're gonna pass to the member curiosities.
Next steps.
Next steps. Thank you.
So member curiosities is next. Next step.
Yes,
Oh yeah, for
member
sure.
curiosities.
It
Yeah.
is
Big.
mine's
Big.
the slides.
All right, y'all are probably familiar with this part. We just have a little bit of time for anyone to bring forward any items that they want to discuss. Can be anything, can be from today, can be from later. We're not going to be voting on anything, but you're welcome to bring up whatever you feel like. And I just want to say during this part, thank you everyone for pushing through. It's great that we finished the document. I know it's a little bit late, but really appreciate everyone toughing that out. It's always nice to get something finished during a meeting. So appreciate it. Thank you. And then if anyone else has anything to say, feel free. Looks like Commissioner Handelman does.
Oh, thank you, Co-Chair Oriana Bauer. And yeah, well, we have a survey that I guess is out to the public about the name that we're working on for the new system. And I had asked what the deadline is to tell people to get their votes in on that. Well, not that they're voting, they're suggesting, but and I didn't get a reply. Does anybody know what the deadline is that we can tell community members to take that poll so I can send it out with a deadline on it? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Staff?
Yep, it's coming up in 2 slides, but it's 11:59 p.m. Pacific on Wednesday, July 12th.
Thank you, staff. Okay, we're going to phase of work transition task. I will pass it to staff.
Yes, thank you. So one of the other surveys that's going on is a member survey, and it's on the co-chair, the full commission co-chairs for phase 6. That is the only active phase of work transition task right now, and it is still active because there haven't been enough votes yet. So a couple reminder emails have gone out. Please, if you haven't weighed in on who the co-chairs should be for the next phase of work, please do so as soon as possible so that those co-chairs are able to get started on their work and be able to know that they're going to be co-chairs by Thursday, and that we can staff can review at the meeting what we have to show publicly about how that voting played out. As you may recall, there are 5 candidates for 3 full commission co-chair spots. Those candidates are Angie, CMOB, Sophia, Dan, Charlie. And so please feel free to go in and do that. It shouldn't take too long. A couple minutes should be enough. So that is still ongoing, and hopefully staff will try to let the candidates know what the prior to the meeting on Thursday, but it'll all be sort of acknowledged and discussed at the Thursday meeting. So that's what's going on there. And that's the last sort of transition task that's in progress. But wanted to transparently indicate that it's just there aren't enough votes yet to be definitive yet. So apologies for that. And please do submit the vote if you haven't yet. And I'll pass it back over to Victoria.
Thank you, staff. Now it's time for garden plot. We won't be using this time to add new items not previously mentioned or to discuss any items, but we will use this list to develop future agendas on those items can be addressed. Co-chair or staff, do you have any item for garden plot? No?
I don't, but if you could go to the next slide, please, after that.
Sure. And also, facilitator, Yomide, do you have anything for garden plot? No? Okay, I will pass it again for staff.
Yeah, so as Commissioner Dan mentioned, there is a survey out to the public. It should be getting circulated widely once again, and any community member, please do weigh in who may be listening. It's tinyurl.com/Portland PAC name survey. And there's a lot of information on the slide, but the key things are, takes a couple minutes. Please fill it out by 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday, July 12th. That is the day after tomorrow. And that should allow for the commission to get sort of a summary, a report of all the feedback in advance of the Thursday meeting, when they may be voting, or I should say approving, finalizing the draft areas of agreement on name and other details. And yes, to the question in the Q&A, we'll put the URL in the chat for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're gonna conclude this meeting. Thank you to all of the members who attended today's meeting and for your contributions today. Thank you also to the interpreters. Finally, thank you to the members of the community for attending and contributing with your questions. If you're not already signed up for email updates, please also sign up to receive updates from the PAC. The next meeting of the Police Accountability Commission is July 13 at 6:30. There is also an info section at the Smile Station, Selwood, tomorrow, July 11 from 6 to 8 p.m. It is now 9:18 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much and congratulations for passing this document. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks,
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, y'all.
Good
Thanks
night.
again.
Everyone, good work.